Come, come, whoever you are, wanderer, worshiper, lover of leaving, it doesn't matter. Ours is not a caravan of despair. Come, even if you have broken your vows 1,000 times, come yet again, come, come. Come, come, whoever you are, wanderer, worshiper, lover of leaving, it doesn't matter. Ours is not a caravan of despair. Come, even if you have broken your vows 1,000 times, come yet again, come, come. Good afternoon, friends. It is an honor to be here, to be asked by people who know me, to be trusted to bring a message that I hope will be enriching. And it is somewhat intimidating. Since you are my people, my friends, my spiritual home, I can't leave at the end of the day and say, well, at least I won't have to see them again. When I do my treasurer's work for the yearly meeting, I sometimes remind myself that no one wants me to fail, that you are all here to support me. While working on this lecture, I often reminded myself the same. I ask that you hold me in the light today. My prayer is that I may be a faithful messenger and that Spirit will reach that of God in you through these words. Know that if I say anything that makes you uncomfortable or makes you feel unwelcome, that is not my intent. We are all different. We all come from different places, have different experiences, and all have our own tender spots. I ask that you practice listening in tongues, and I thank you now for the grace that you are extending to me. As the poem by Rumi said, come, come, whoever you are. Whoever you are, whatever you have done, you are invited to and welcome at God's banquet. If you are a wanderer, you are invited and welcome. If you have broken your vows 1,000 times, you are invited and welcome. If you are a seeker, you are invited and welcome. If you are a finder, you are invited and welcome. Come join our caravan and share the journey. You are welcome as you are, seeker or finder. This afternoon, I will share with you stories of spiritual journeying, stories of seeking, stories of finding shadow, finding healing, finding transformation, and ultimately, finding loving welcome. I invite you to reflect on your own journey and your own experience to see how it might be similar to or how it might differ from the stories I will share. And I invite you to consider how you have found loving welcome and how you may extend that loving welcome to others. When I speak of finding shadow, I do not mean evil. Shadow is the inevitable consequence of light, but not necessarily its opposite, or evil, or bad. As an example, the shadow of love is not hate. The shadow of love is pain. Love is perhaps the most wonderful thing, but if you love, eventually you will feel pain, the pain of the loss of your beloved. Shadow may be the very thing we bring about in our attempt to avoid it. In an attempt to avoid hurt, we may lock our hearts up tight inside ourselves and only succeed in locking out the love we seek and locking in our pain. Ask me how I know. Do you cherish that of God within you so that love may grow in you and rule your life? Do you cherish that of God within you so that love may grow in you and rule your life? Spirit has prompted me and reminded me over and over that the message today is this: you are loved. You are loved exactly as you are and for who you are right now. You are, in the greeting so many of us have received from Bob Allenson, the beloved child of God. Are you a seeker? You are loved exactly as you are. Are you a finder? You are loved exactly as you are. Are you a leaver? You are loved exactly as you are. And if you are a breaker of vows, you are loved exactly as you are. I spent many years believing, even if not on a conscious level, that I needed to get good enough for other people to love me, and certainly for God to love me. I was unable to see myself as the beloved child of God. After some time attending Quaker meeting, I read this query from Britain Yearly Meeting. Do you cherish that of God within you so that love may grow in you and rule your life? I was stunned and shocked by this query. I suddenly realized that on a deep level, deep unconscious level, I believed that that of God in everyone meant that of God in everyone else. I had left myself out again. How do we come to know that we are loved? That we are the beloved of God? How do we offer loving welcome to each other? One way is to share the stories of our spiritual journeys. How we came to be where we are and who we are, and how we have found a loving welcome. When I hear someone else's spiritual journey, the journey of struggles, of insights, of times seemingly without light, of finding spiritual connection, I may hear my own story and see the reflection of my journey and know I am not alone or so different that I am unacceptable. The stories of others' spiritual journeys of sharing, seeking, and finding can make us feel welcome, and sharing our stories of seeking and finding allow others to know that they are welcome also. I recently reread the 2014 Michener Lecture given by Deborah Fish, Growing the Beloved Community. During the lecture, she shared that meetings are being changed by simply saying, let's tell each other our stories again. Friends have a long history of telling each other our stories, sharing spiritual journeys. After all, what are Quaker journals or memoirs other than a record of that journey? So let's tell each other our stories again. Telling our stories is filled with incredible spiritual power. Part of the basis of 12-step recovery programs is sharing experience strength, and hope, telling each other what it was like, what happened, what it is like now, sharing lives' true stories in full, including weakness and failure, as well as strengths and successes. This is one way that God in me may answer to that of God in you. How welcoming it is to know that we are not alone. Knowing that others have faced the same struggles and difficulties can be a balm to the soul. To know that someone else has journeyed on to deeper love gives hope to flagging spirits. Have you struggled? Do you struggle with accepting that you are the beloved child of God? Have you struggled? Do you struggle with accepting that you are the beloved child of God? I sometimes ponder the stories of healing in the Bible, not for a literal understanding of God miraculously healing a physical malady, but for what these stories say about love and acceptance and welcome experienced by those healed. Many of these stories involve Jesus touching the untouchable, becoming ritually unclean by touching the unclean, by healing the outcast and the oppressor. In Luke, Jesus says, "For John the Baptist came neither eating nor drinking wine, and you say, 'He has a demon.' The Son of Man came eating and drinking, and you say, 'Here is a glutton and a drunkard, a friend of tax collectors and sinners.'" Imagine Jesus as a drunkard and a glutton, a friend of traitors and sinners. Who would not be welcome in his caravan? When Jesus had come down from the mountain after the Sermon on the Mount, great crowds followed him. And there was a leper who came to him and knelt before him and saying, "Lord, if you choose, you can make me clean." And Jesus stretched out his hand, touching him, saying, "I do choose, be made clean." Immediately his leprosy was cleaned. When Jesus entered Capernaum, a centurion came to him, appealing to him and saying, "Lord, my servant is lying at home, paralyzed in terrible distress." And Jesus said to him, "I will come and cure him." The centurion answered, "Lord, I am not worthy to have you come under my roof, but only speak the word, and my servant will be healed." And to the centurion Jesus said, "Go, let it be done for you according to your faith." And the servant was healed in that hour. When Jesus entered Peter's house, he saw his mother-in-law lying in bed with a fever, and he touched her hand, and the fever left her. That evening they brought to him many who were possessed by demons, and he cast out spirits with a word and cured all who were sick. In this short passage, Jesus heals someone afflicted with leprosy by making himself ritually unclean in the process, heals the servant of a captain of the occupying and terrorizing Roman army, and many others. Would not each and every one of these people have felt welcome in Jesus' caravan of followers? I have to ask myself, is there something so wrong with me that I would not be welcome? Of course not. An image I like for describing the welcome place for our souls is from the prophet Isaiah. "Hear, everyone who thirsts, come to the waters, and you that have no money, come, buy and eat. Come buy wine and milk without money and without price. Why do you spend your money for that which is not bread, and your earnings for that which does not satisfy? Listen carefully to me and eat what is good. Delight yourselves in rich food. Incline your ear and come to me. Listen so that you may live. Here, the prophet is not talking about a lack of cash or financial resources, but a lack of spiritual resources. Is your soul thirsty? God invites you to come to the living waters and slake your thirst. Is your soul hungry? God invites you to the divine banquet where you may buy wine and milk without money and eat what is good and delight yourself in rich food without price. Do you have a restless, thirsty, hungry soul? Do you have a restless, thirsty, and hungry soul? From the prophet Haggai, you have sown much and harvested little. You eat, but never have enough. You drink, but never have your fill. You clothe yourselves, but no one is warm. And you that earn wages to put them in a bag with holes. I have suffered from spiritual thirst and hunger of the soul. I have heard others describe this as the hole in the soul that the cold wind blows through, or the God-shaped hole in the soul. And since I heard others describe this, I know that I am not the only person who has suffered from it. I might say that I have always had a restless soul, that I have had restless soul syndrome. We seem to like to make everything a syndrome these days. St. Augustine wrote in his Confessions, "You have made us for yourself, O Lord, and our hearts are restless until they rest in you." This seems to me to capture a fundamental aspect of human nature, that we are restless because our souls are seeking their true home, our true home where we are welcome, our true home where we are welcome and loved unconditionally as we are, our true home where we know we are the beloved child of God. If you, like me, have restless soul syndrome, you are a seeker. And if you are a seeker, you are also a finder. In the Gospel of Matthew, in the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus says, "Ask, and it will be given you. Seek, and you will find. Knock, and it will be opened to you. For everyone that asks receives, and everyone that seeks finds. And to the one that knocks, it will be opened." The passage does not say, "Seek and maybe you will find," or "Seek and perhaps you will find." But everyone that seeks finds. I have sought and journeyed and found. I did not always find what I hoped to find. Today, I continue to seek and journey and find. As a person who has restless soul syndrome, I find I am actually in good company. George Fox had a restless soul, as did St. Augustine, and countless others. Perhaps you too are in that number. In Fox's journal, he writes of his early seeking to satisfy a deep longing. His initial searching was outward. He looked to others to feed and satisfy his inward craving. At the tender age of 19, he left home. On the 9th day of the 7th month, 1643, I left my relations and break off all familiarity and fellowship with young or old, and I passed to Lutterworth. From thence, I went to Northampton, and from thence to Newport Pagnell in Buckinghamshire. Then I went to Barnet. From Barnet, I went to London. At all these places he stayed a while, and went to many a priest to look for comfort, and found no comfort from them. Certainly, his was a restless soul, seeking outward to fill the inward craving. Augustine of Hippo wrote in Confessions, I was in the external world and sought you there, and in my unlovely state I plunged into those lovely created things which you had made. Like George Fox, at the tender age of 19, I left home. I was seeking. But I was not seeking like Fox. I was like Augustine. My seeking took me out into the external world, where I also plunged into those lovely created things which God had made. Some make jokes about our misspent youth, sex, drugs, and rock and roll. But for people like me, my misspent youth, and maybe for others in different ways, food, gambling, pursuit of professional success and possessions, are actually the shadow of our seeking. I was looking for comfort and a sense of belonging and welcome, but found loneliness and disconnection instead. I looked outside myself in hope of finding comfort for my restless soul. I spent money for that which is not bread, and my earnings on that which did not satisfy. I ate, but never had enough. I drank, but never had my fill. I earned wages and put them in a bag with holes. This outward search was an unsuccessful attempt to find a way to fill that hole in my soul, that hole where the cold wind blew through. I sought outside myself for a salve to care for my inward wound. And since I sought, I found. But I found the shadow of what I sought. I have often referred to this passage from the book of Lamentations to describe how I felt then. I am one who has seen affliction under the rod of God's wrath. He has driven and brought me into darkness without light. Against me alone he turns his hand again and again all day long. He has walled me about so that I cannot escape. He has put heavy chains on me. Though I cry and call for help, he shuts out my prayer. He has blocked my ways with hewn stones and made my paths crooked. He is a bear lying in wait for me, a lion in hiding. He led me off my way and tore me to pieces. He made me desolate. He bent his bow and set me a mark for his arrows. He shot into my vitals the arrows of his quiver. I have become a laughingstock of all my people, the object of their taunts all day long. My soul is bereft of peace. I have forgotten what happiness is. Along your journey, have you found yourself diminished, faced with demands too difficult to fulfill? Along your journey, have you found yourself diminished, faced with demands too difficult to fill? The outward search leads to finding shadow, not light. In his journal, Fox relates many times that during his early seeking, what he found was temptation to despair. He wrote, Now, during the time I was at Barnet, a strong temptation to despair came upon me. And again, after some time, I went into my own country again and was there about a year in great sorrows and troubles, and walked many nights by myself. And still again, sorrows, grief, and troubles, which were so great upon me that I could have wished I had never been born. His outward seeking to satisfy the inward craving found shadow, not light. In the year 1647, he was traveling again, still seeking. He relates, "My troubles continued, and I was often under great temptations, and I fasted much, and walked abroad in solitary places many days, and often took my Bible and went and sat in hollow trees and lonesome places till night came on, and frequently in the night walked mournfully about by myself, for I was a man of great sorrows." The longing for the light of connection and union brought his loneliness and disconnection into stark contrast. Seeking outward to heal the inward wound brought George Fox despair. It brought St. Augustine and me to plunge into those lovely created things God had made. Ultimately, seeking outside to fix what was broken inside led to finding despair and anguish. This part of Dorothy Nimmo's journal is in Britain Yearly Meetings, Faith and Practice, and I strongly relate to it. "When I left school, I set out into the world determined that nothing so small as the society of friends would hold me. I want the real world," I said. "Friends are good people, aunts and uncles and cousins, and friends of the family to whom I must always be polite. They do not drink or smoke or swear. They do not lose their tempers. They do not love money. They do not worship success. Well, only a little bit. They do not compete. They do not gamble. They do not fight. They do not do what they want to do. If they want to do something very much, they deeply suspect it is not the right thing to do. But I am not like that. I would like to drink and smoke and make money and be successful. I want to fight and to win. I want to please myself and enjoy myself. I am talented and clever and malicious. I will escape, for I am clearly not a Quaker, and find out what I am. I am no one's daughter and no one's granddaughter," I said defiantly. "I am myself." And I marched down Shaftesbury Avenue waving my banner with only a casual glance at Westminster Meeting House. What I am telling is a classic story, but we must admit that every cliche contains profound truth. And a story is a classic because so many people recognize it as true. "Father," I said, "give me my inheritance and I will go out and seek a fortune." So I took my inheritance and went out and spent it. When it was all gone and I came to myself, and finding myself somewhat diminished, faced with demands I found difficult to fulfill, I went to meeting. "Here I am," I said. "That's all right. Just for a bit of a sit down. Whatever you need." "You mustn't expect anything from me," I said. "I can only bring need." "Whatever you have." Have you sought healing for your soul? What have you found? Have you sought healing for your soul? What have you found? The years of believing I was the only person who felt as I did were shown to be a lie that I told myself. But it was a lie that was easily believed because no one around me told me of their journey. I didn't know that others felt the same as I did. My family was as Dorothy Nimmo described hers. They do not drink, they do not smoke, they do not swear, they do not lose their tempers. Well, not too much anyway, in my case. They do not love money, they do not worship success, they do not compete, they do not gamble, they do not fight, they do not do what they want to do, and if they want to do something very much, they suspect it is wrong. And I was overly sensitive and very much like Dorothy. I would like to drink and smoke and make money and be successful. I want to fight and win. I want to please myself and enjoy myself, to be myself. I am clever, talented, and malicious. I will escape, for I am clearly not like my family. And I thought and hoped that to drink and smoke and to make money and to be successful, to fight and to win, to please myself and to enjoy myself would fix me. This would certainly fill the hole in my soul, I was sure. The funny thing about spiritual anguish and deep despair is that it can be so much more beneficial than mere discomfort. I don't know about you, but I was able to take an awful lot of punishment and emotional and spiritual pain. Discomfort alone would not have been enough to get me to change direction. So a good beating by selfish and self-centered thinking, enhanced by feelings of self-pity and envy, did what nothing else had been able to do. It opened me to seeking healing of my inward wound, of finding a different way to fill the hole in my soul. First, what I found were people who were like me, people who had suffered the same way that I had. And they told me their stories, what life had been like for them, the rough going and unhappiness, their difficulties, troubles, and sorrows. I knew at last that I was not alone. They told me of their journeys to finding healing. Slowly, oh so slowly, I opened to the possibility that I too could find healing. Perhaps, just maybe, God did not hate me. I felt sure that I was so bad that God could never love me. Now, these feelings were in no way supported by fact or evidence. Really, I was not a terrible person. Just selfish, self-centered, envious, self-pitying, angry, and resentful. I wasn't a murderer or even a robber. My new people told me that they practiced self-examination, confession, prayed for guidance, and then strength to follow the guidance received. They suggested that if I tried it, it might work for me too. And it wouldn't hurt to run the guidance I thought I was receiving past some other folks just to be sure I was not self-deceived, sort of like an informal clearness committee. Sure enough, it started to work for me. I began to find healing. In 1652, George Fox gave a Quaker version of this suggestion. Friends, whatever ye are addicted to, the tempter will come in that thing. And when he can trouble you, then he gets advantage over you, and then you are gone. Stand still in that which is pure. After ye see yourselves, and then mercy comes in. After thou seest thy thoughts and thy temptations, do not think, but submit. Then power comes. Stand still in that which shows and discovers, then doth strength immediately come. And stand still in the light and submit to it, and the others will be hushed and gone, and then contentment comes. In 1989, I was searching for a spiritual community where I could belong. At the age of 29, I ventured into Friends Meeting for the first time. I found additional love and healing among friends. I found I was welcome as I was. Welcome as I was. The ways that friends have loved me have not been miraculous, but they have been deeds of kindness and generosity. The everyday love of everyday situations. Friends helped my soul to heal. Not the dramatic healing that Jesus often brought, but just as wonderful. Friends have shown me the love of God through the hands of humans. Part of my employment at that time was providing material to a company that made desalination equipment to make drinking water from seawater. Sounds good, right? My customer's customer was the US Navy, and the equipment went on warships. I was troubled by my participation in supplying equipment that went into a vessel made for war. There was a member of the meeting who shared his story with me. He worked as a civilian contractor for the armed forces. And as I recall, his position was involved with supplying goods to base exchanges, where soldiers and their dependents could shop. He struggled with the morality of working for the US Armed Forces. He did not have a clear answer for himself. It might not sound like much, but his sharing his journey, which was ongoing, was very helpful to me. I had been raised deeply religious with the idea that religion was about being certain. There was no black, there was no gray, there was black and white. It was a destination, not a journey. Meeting someone else who was still on their journey and questioning themselves, but not condemning themselves, was eye-opening. It was a novel concept to me that I could question myself without condemnation. I could be where I was on my journey without beating myself up over not being further along. I tended to be hard on myself, but the people at meeting were the living embodiment of chapter 14 of Paul's letter to the Romans. Accept anyone who is weak in faith without debate about his misgivings. Who are you to pass judgment on someone else's servant? Whether he stands or falls is his own master's business, and stand he will, because his master has the power to enable him to stand. Let us therefore cease judging one another, but rather make up our minds to place no obstacle or stumbling block in a fellow's way. All that I know of the Lord Jesus convinces me that nothing is impure in itself. Only if anyone considers something impure, then for him it is impure. For the kingdom of God is justice, peace, and joy, inspired by the Holy Spirit. Everyone who shows himself to be a servant of Christ in this way is acceptable to God and approved by men. Let us then pursue the things that make for peace and build up the common life. If you have some firm conviction, keep it between yourself and God. In a word, accept one another as Christ accepts us, to the glory of God. This kind of love offers healing and promise. Even the writer of Lamentations, after the description of despair I quoted a few minutes ago, continues with these words of hope. The Lord's love is surely not exhausted, nor has his compassion failed. They are new every morning, so great is his constancy. The love that friends have shown me over the past 30-plus years makes clear to me the Lord's love is surely not exhausted, nor has his compassion failed. They are new every morning. Through the love of friends, I learned slowly about the infinite love of God. That infinite ocean of light and love that flows over the ocean of my inward darkness. My ocean of self-doubt, self-condemnation, of fears of being inadequate and unlovable. Your stories, sharing your journeys, has had a great positive impact on my life. One of the things that I love about our small Treasure Coast worship group is that we share deeply with each other. We share our experiences of spirit, of hearing God speak to us, of literally seeing the light, of physically feeling the presence, of being overwhelmed with love. What a blessing to be able to share these deep experiences with others. Not every one of us has had the same experiences, but we know the truth being shared. What do you know experientially? What can you say from inward truth? What do you know experientially? What can you say from inward truth? Some have sudden and dramatic transformations. Among friends, George Fox's is widely known. In his journal, he relates the transforming experience he had at about 20 years of age. Now, after I had received that opening from the Lord that to be bred at Oxford or Cambridge was not sufficient to fit a man to be a minister of Christ, I regarded the priests less and looked more after the dissenting people. As I had forsaken all the priests, so I left the separate preachers also, and those called the most experienced people. For I saw there was none among them that could speak to my condition. And when all my hopes in them and in all men were gone, so that I had nothing outwardly to help me, then I heard a voice which said, there is one, even Christ Jesus, that can speak to thy condition. And my heart did leap for joy. And this I knew experimentally. Some of us have much slower journeys to healing and transformation. Much, much slower. St. Augustine wrote of his healing and transformation, late have I loved you, beauty so old and so new, late have I loved you. And see, you were within, and I was in the external world and sought you there. And in my unlovely state I plunged into those lovely created things which you made. You were with me, and I was not with you. The lovely things kept me far away from you, though if they did not have their existence in you, they had no existence at all. You called and cried out loud and shattered my deafness. You were radiant and resplendent. You put to flight my blindness. You were fragrant, and I drew in my breath, and now I pant for you. I tasted you, and I feel but hunger and thirst for you. You touched me, and I am set on fire to attain the peace which is yours. Slowly, ever so slowly, over years and years, the love of God, in part expressed by friends, has transformed me. I now know by experience that I am and always have been the beloved child of God. And I know the same is true for you also, whether you know it or not. No one needs to get good enough to be God's beloved. I have been privileged to witness the transformation and healing of others brought about by the power of divine love expressed through sharing our journeys of seeking, finding, and welcoming each other. I have been witness to people who were uncomfortable and afraid to be themselves transformed into happy, strong individuals. Today they know themselves to be the beloved child of God. A beloved child as God as they are right now, not only in some future state when they are good enough. We do not, and never did, need to get good enough for God. We are already perfect as we are for God. Transformation and healing are for us. They're not for God. 1 John chapter 4, verse 18 reads, "There is no fear in love, but perfect love casts out fear. Let the assurance of perfect, divine love cast out any fear that you have that you are not enough right now, today." For most of my life, up until just a couple years ago, I harbored secret fears. Those fears that whispered in my ear, "Sure, they act like your friends, but are they really? After all, who could really like you and be your friend?" Or, "You know you're not good enough, and someday they'll find out that you're a fraud and just pretending." In 2019, a new program for the School of the Spirit titled Participating in God's Power began. I applied and was one of about 18 people accepted as a participant. This program of study and experience would follow the pattern of Jesus' life, incarnation, knowing ourselves as God's beloved, temptation, harrowing and crucifixion, resurrection and transformation. Part of the work we did together was small group sharing. We were invited in small groups to create a brave space where we could share our experience, our struggles, our fears, our wounds. Sharing this in a brave space can be a transformative, healing experience. The second residency of the program was held at a convent outside Philadelphia just before COVID stopped everything. Because I wake at really ridiculous hours of the day, I had time in the morning before anybody else was up and about. And I went to the chapel to sit quietly and pray. One of the nuns came in and she was setting out flowers for the day, and she suggested I might like to sit in the little chapel where the consecrated host is kept. So I went into the little chapel behind the chapel. It was really lovely. It actually has a very famous piece of stained glass there. It's quite lovely. Anyway, and there I sat and I prayed. The power and presence of Spirit was strong, very strong. I was so enthralled with the feeling of the presence in this little chapel that I went back at any opportunity. I experienced the divine through hearing and through touch. I hear the light speak in my mind, and sometimes I physically feel the presence. You may experience the divine presence differently. Visions. I don't know. It's not how I do it. While I was sitting in the little chapel praying, a funny thing happened. Not funny, ha-ha, but funny as completely unexpected. Jesus came and sat down with me. Jesus came and talked with me and held my hand. Jesus came and sat with me and held my hand, and it was very, very intimate. Now, you might think that Jesus is all serious, that he speaks in what I call our Bible voice, the serious voice that we use when reading even the funny and ridiculous parts of the Bible. Let me tell you, that is not how Jesus spoke to me. He made nerdy jokes with Star Trek references. Divine love. Resistance is futile. Just before morning mass was beginning in the large chapel, he excitedly said he wanted me to come out to meet his other friends. And so I went out to the chapel for mass. What a joy. At our next plenary session for the program, I expressed these experiences I had by telling everyone, I have a new boyfriend. And there were some shocked gasps. And, what happened to Brian? Questions. And I followed up with, my new boyfriend's name is Jesus. It turned out to be quite a transformative experience. Maybe not how one would expect. I am a devoted husband to Brian. I am not a great boyfriend to Jesus. I don't set enough time aside for him. I can be inattentive. I get wrapped up in my work. That's true for Brian too. But here's the transformation that I only saw in hindsight. I just glimpsed the perfect love of the divine. And those fears that haunted me my life have almost completely left. I understand, I have experienced the meaning of the passage from 1 John, that there is no fear in love, that perfect love casts out fear. Come, come, whoever you are, wanderer, worshiper, lover of leaving, it doesn't matter. Ours is not a caravan of despair. Come, even if you have broken your vows 1,000 times, come yet again, come, come. Come, come, whoever you are. Dear friend, whoever you are, whatever you have done, you are invited and welcome at God's banquet. If you are a wanderer, you are invited and welcome. If you have broken your vows 1,000 times, you are invited and welcome. If you are a seeker, you are invited and welcome. If you are a finder, you are invited and welcome. Come, come join our caravan and share the journey. You are welcome as you are, seeker or finder. Come, eat what is good and delight yourselves in rich food. Join the caravan of the glutton and drunkard, friend of traitors and sinners. Join the caravan and tell us of your journey. Tell us of your seeking and share with us your finding. I invite us all to, as Deborah Fish said, tell each other our stories again. Create a brave space if you can, and share from your heart. Share the longing, the thirst, the hunger of your soul. You may be delighted to find others on the same journey. Help each other along the way.